Tonight on Reporting Scotland, the Scottish Government sets out new income tax options ahead of the budget. How will they affect your bank balance? We find out who is and isn't happy at the first UK interest rate rise in 10 years.
The interest rates have been rock bottom, so it's been pretty hard to get credit, but it's been pretty good when you do get it. So I'm not really too sure what I would do. I've never had to pay my way when interest rates have been so high.
Also on the programme, a mother accused of killing her toddler daughter tells a High Court trial she didn't do it. Whatever happened to Tour de France cyclist Robert Miller? We've been speaking exclusively to the Glasgow-born rider. And plans for a network of shared pedestrian and cycle lanes in Glasgow city centre failed to win over some disability groups. Good evening. Scotland has been put on standby for higher income tax, but the First Minister insisted any increase in the overall tax take would be modest and stressed her determination to protect the lowest paid. Nicola Sturgeon outlined 4 options on tax. The Tories said Scotland's economy would suffer. This from our political editor, Brian Taylor.
Fancy paying more tax? Staff at this Glasgow recruitment firm might be willing.
I think the key issue is making sure that the Scottish Government provide a quality of service and the public have confidence in what they're trying to do.
Well, I don't really think anybody likes paying tax, but it's something that's necessary.
Some question why the burden has to fall on income tax.
Corporation tax, some of the biggest companies in the UK that have got British in their title should be paying the full amount of tax, as opposed to me paying a higher level.
But Scottish ministers only control income tax, and they say they need to raise more money to counter austerity and cope with Brexit.
You're also softening Scotland up for the fact that the burden of income tax is going to increase.
I don't expect that people will celebrate being asked to pay even modest amounts more in tax. I think this is time for a mature, honest, collective discussion about whether it's time to ask those who can most afford to do so to pay a modest, and I stress a modest increase to help us collectively provide the services that we all rely on.
Here's what you'd pay in income tax from April if nothing changes. 3 tax bands based on earnings, tax rates of 20%, 40% and 45%. The first option, leave the bands alone, add 1% to the top 2 rates. Or you could have 4 bands. You'd pay 20% on earnings up to $24,000. Above that, to $44,290, you'd pay 21%. Then it's 41% up to £150,000 and 48% or 50% above that. Slot in a 5th band. You'd pay 41% up to $75,000 in earnings and 42% up to $150,000. Top rate, 50%. Or 6 bands, adding in a new lower rate of 19% up to £15,000 earnings.
We move now to First Minister's questions. Question number 1, Ruth Davids.
Business isn't happy, and Tories say higher tax adds up to a downer for the economy.
But doesn't she see that first and foremost we need to have a debate about boosting economic growth in Scotland to levels at least that of elsewhere in these islands?
Labour's Jackie Bailey said the package didn't raise enough to cover planned pay increases.
There is a black hole. There's a black hole in the budget.
But Patrick Harvey of the Greens liked the sound of it.
I congratulate the First Minister for seeing the sense in what the Greens have been advocating for the last couple of years.
Don't like the look of this one.
Nobody likes tax.
Thought as much.
But change is coming. This option won't be available to you.
Well, Brian's at Holyrood for us tonight. Brian, we know the tax options now. Any chance of the parties agreeing the way forward?
I think there could be a deal. Basically, you have a philosophical debate in the period ahead. Tory SNP, is the economy boosted by holding taxation down, or, as Nicola Sturgeon was arguing today could direct investment in supporting business and in issues like free tuition stimulate and assist the economy. Then you have a pragmatic dispute about how the budget bill gets through Parliament behind me here. You saw Patrick Harvey smile. I think it's most likely that a deal will be with the Greens. They're going to want the SNP, the Scottish Government, to go even further than the modest proposals they're advancing today. The SNP response says, hey, big parties have rights too.
Brian, thank you very much. Brian Taylor there. Interest rates have gone up for the first time in a decade. The cost of borrowing rises by 0.25%, taking it to 0.5%. It's good news for many savers, but not so good for those of us with a loan, a credit deal or a mortgage. Our business correspondent David Henderson reports.
The cost of borrowing is on the rise for the first time in a decade. And that's a new experience for Alan Roy, who has a mortgage for his flat and a car loan too.
Well, I've got a spare room, so I could possibly look at someone in to rent that out. It's not really something I want, like my own personal space, but maybe something I have to do if it can take some of the pressure off.
But rising interest rates don't present a challenge to everyone. Pensioners at this club near Glasgow are glad to see a slightly better return on their savings.
Well, if it's more money into my account, that'd be great. But the interest rates just now in the banks, they're worthwhile having.
Well, I think quite a lot of people here have been saying it will make a difference to their savings that they had, which they're relying on. If they said they're putting up 10%, I would be excited.
The Bank of England only expects interest rates to rise slightly and gradually over the next couple of years. But many people who have borrowed money will notice a difference in the amount of interest they're paying. And where people's household finances are already under pressure, rates don't have to rise very much to really feel the effect. This lawyer advises people caught up in debt. He warns that even a small rise in the cost of borrowing could have a dire impact.
But I think the Bank of England's made a huge mistake today. Rates are going up, and there's suspicions that this could happen in terms of further rises. So for those 700,000 adults in Scotland with problem debts, many of which are on the knife edge, this is going to tip them over, in my view.
Most people with car loans or savings may not notice much change for now, as interest rates remain close to a record low. But they're on the move for the first time in years. David Henderson reporting Scotland.
Our business and economy editor, Douglas Fraser, is here. It looks, Douglas, now then as if people are going to be facing income tax rises and interest rate rises.
A double whammy, yes. Interest rates had only one way to go. That was up, partly to tackle inflation, also to return to normality, which for savers is long overdue. It's a small change we've got today, but it sends a big message, particularly to those who've been taking on worrying levels of debt to say, caw canny, the cost of that debt is going to go up. On income tax, there's also just one direction of travel. That's towards more tax revenue. The question being asked by the Scottish Government is not should Scots pay more tax, but how much more and which Scots should pay more tax. Now, this is a vital learning experience for MSPs, ministers, and for the wider public. After 18 years of Holyrood spending money, it's now taking on these significant taxation powers and responsibilities. It could raise tax or it could make tax fairer, and that might boost public services, but it might also hurt economic growth and reduce revenue and harm public services. We simply don't know how these tax levers are going to work. We do know, though, that choices bring consequences. This national debate starting today and the winter budget battle will probably shape tax and spending in Scotland for many years to come.
Douglas Fraser, thank you very much indeed. A mother has told the High Court in Glasgow she did not murder her 14-month-old daughter. Sadia Ahmed told the jury she loved her daughter Inaya with her heart and soul. Aileen Clark was in court.
Sadia Ahmed was asked by the Defence QC, did you murder your daughter on the 17th of April last year? No, she replied. He said, did you murder her by suffocating her? No, she replied. He asked, did you murder her by any other means? No, Sadia Ahmed replied. He went on to ask her if she had told her husband that she had killed Inaya because she was a burden. My Inaya wasn't a burden. I loved her with my heart and soul, she replied. Sadia Ahmed told the court that morning at the family home in Glasgow she'd broken off a small piece of toast and given it to Anaya. The child started to cough and tears were coming out of the toddler's eyes. She said she screamed for her mother-in-law to come, and Sadia Ahmed patted the child on the back, then her mother-in-law did the same. Anaya was still coughing, she said. Then after some time, she said she did stop coughing, but became all floppy in her mother-in-law's arms. Her brother-in-law phoned the ambulance and followed instructions on the phone till the paramedics arrived. She was asked if there was any reason that she would want to kill her own baby. She shook her head and said, "My Anaya was the world to me," and then she broke down sobbing. Later, when questioned by the prosecutor, Paul Kearney, Sadia Ahmed said she had not smothered Anaya with a pillow or hit or abused her in any way at any point. The prosecutor then said to her that in the 999 call, when her brother-in-law said it's the mother that's abused the child and the whole house is a witness, then logically the only thing he could be talking about is that morning. "That is not correct," Sadia Ahmed replied. "I've never harmed her previously or on that day." He asked her if she thought other members of the family had got together and decided to make false allegations against her, cold-bloodedly lying. "Yes," she replied. The trial continues at the High Court tomorrow. Aileen Clark, reporting Scotland, Glasgow.
10 people injured in the Clutha helicopter crash 4 years ago have secured compensation totalling £1.3 million. The company that owned the helicopter has agreed payments of between £5,000 and £600,000. The latest payments are thought to include compensation for serious head and back injuries and stress-related illnesses following the crash. He was the Tour de France rider from Glasgow who took on the world's best to win the famous King of the Mountains polka dot jersey in 1984. But after his cycling career ended, Robert Miller disappeared from public life amidst rumours of a gender change. Our reporter Rona McLeod managed to contact the reclusive rider and has this exclusive report.
Miller can prepare himself now for the salute.
On his way to becoming King of the Mountains.
Miller's won the stage in the Tour de France.
A phenomenal achievement for the Scot, beating the best in world cycling. He then disappeared in an attempt to maintain privacy through an extremely difficult and personal life transition.
Now, I never met Robert Miller, but I wondered over the past 15 years or so what happened to this most reluctant of sporting superstars. But today, after weeks of emails and phone calls, I'm finally going to meet Philippa York. Oh, yes, I do.
Hello.
It's lovely to meet you.
York has agreed to meet me in Glasgow, the city of her birth. This is the first time she's appeared on camera in her new identity. It's been 2 decades since she was last in Scotland.
Most recently would have been almost 20 years ago when my sister got married. It's a long time ago.
York's journey will include seeing some old friends from the past who'll be meeting Philippa for the first time.
I usually feel quite, not embarrassed, but awkward. It's not that I don't know what to say. Since they've known me before, there's this kind of awkwardness that they don't really quite know how to treat you.
Amongst the people York will be meeting is Billy Bilsland, the coach, mentor and father figure who sent young Robert Miller on his journey to success.
After I spoke to you and you said it was coming, I was quite touched.
Are you looking forward to meeting her?
Yeah, I'm looking forward, yeah. You go back a long time, eh? A long time.
What a bell.
Hi, Philippa.
Hello.
Great to see you. You're looking great.
So are you.
Who would have thought a skinny kid from Shawlands would be the first British rider to win the polka dot jersey of the Tour de France? Eh?
Who would have thought it was going to be me?
You never have thought that. I truly hold you in great awe for winning the Dauphiné, the Tour of Romandie. You really no backup.
But I had you guys.
I know, but then you no financial backup.
The thing is, I looked at you and you were tougher than me.
No, I don't know about
and
that.
I had a little bit more talent and a bit more hair.
Yeah.
And you...
I used to have curly hair.
So did I, but it was a perm.
But, you know, you've come a long way. A good life.
Don't start crying.
Don't cry, don't cry. Just remember. Yeah.
I said I wouldn't cry on film.
But as I say, when I got the phone call, you know, to say that you were coming to Scotland, you were going to come and see me, you know, I was quite emotional. You know, I thought, oh, my best boy's coming back.
Make you cry now.
My best girl, rather.
So when would you say that you felt that you were different, that you didn't feel quite happy within your own skin?
Probably the first time when I went to primary school at the age of 5. And I remember this primary school was segregated. There was railings down the middle of the playground. So we came out at half-time in the morning. And I remember thinking, I'd rather be on the girls' side. But I thought, nobody else is kind of hanging onto the little railings looking over. So it made me best not say anything about this.
So how old do you think you were when you realised that you could transition and then that became a focus for you?
I realised you could transition probably in my 20s. But doing what I was doing, I realised also that that wasn't really a practical thing.
So when we would see you winning the polka dot jersey, the King of the Mountains, you were already thinking...
Yeah, there would be days during those years and those periods when I would be thinking that, yeah, and I would be struggling with it.
If you had to make the choice, again, if you could make the choice, would you have transitioned before?
Yes, I would have transitioned in my teenage years.
And not had the cycling?
And I wouldn't have been a cyclist.
And not have had the fame?
I wouldn't have been famous or for infamy or whatever I'm known for. I'd have transitioned when I was younger. If I had the information that's available now to me back then when I was on the cusp of trying to make some kind of decision what I was doing, I would have chosen to transition and not to be a cyclist or whatever I became.
And you can see more on that story on Timeline over on BBC Two at 7:30 this evening. Here are Shireen and Glenn to tell us about that and to look ahead to what else is on.
Yes, we brought Philippa together with Sir Chris Hoy, who was inspired by her career as a road cyclist.
Also, how our use of traditional Scots lingo could mean we're better at languages than we thought.
And I've been chatting to Ross Kemp about going behind bars at Barlinnie for his latest TV assignment.
That's Timeline 7:30, BBC Two Scotland.
You're watching BBC Reporting Scotland. It's just after 14 minutes to 7. A reminder of tonight's top story. Checking your balance. The Scottish Government sets out options for changes to personal income tax ahead of the budget. And still to come, could shared spaces for pedestrians and cyclists work in Glasgow? Some disability campaigners think not. A dam has broken on sexual harassment and locker room culture, and some house clearing is needed. That's according to the Scottish Conservative leader Ruth Davidson. She was reacting to the resignation of the UK Defence Secretary Sir Michael Fallon, who admitted that his behaviour had at times fallen short of what was expected in his role. Earlier today, Theresa May announced that her chief whip would replace him. Our political correspondent Nick Erdley joins us now from Westminster. Nick, what's been the reaction to Sir Michael Fallon's resignation?
Well, Sally, this is an issue that, of course, affects different parties. We've seen allegations in the Labour Party, the SNP and others, but focus today firmly on the Conservatives and the UK government after Sir Michael's resignation last night. He admitted that his behaviour had sometimes fallen short of what would be expected in his role. It followed those reports that he touched a journalist's knee at dinner 15 years ago. Ruth Davidson today saying that she thinks the tone of politics has changed, that a dam has burst and that locker room culture in male-dominated sectors like politics now has to change.
We need to clear house on this one, not just individual political parties, although we do, but also Parliament themselves, because we've seen bullying allegations that's happened between members of staff, we've seen allegations of sexual impropriety between elected members and others, and this is all about power. It's about people who are higher up the tree exerting that power on people who are lower down the tree, people who are junior members of staff, activists, volunteers. That is not acceptable. Now is the time for the culture change.
Now, perhaps inevitably, some have asked the question about whether more resignations might be coming. That's in part because some think some of the allegations which could come out are more serious, that Sir Michael set the bar fairly low in his resignation reasons, or certainly the ones that we knew about. We asked the Scottish Secretary, David Mundell, earlier whether he expected to lose more colleagues.
It is for other individuals to determine, whether they carry on or whether they step back. That these are personal decisions, these are personal matters, and so it'll just depend on the decisions they take and the circumstances as they see them.
Very few people in Parliament think this story is over. For some, it's a question of when and not if more allegations emerge and what they might lead to.
Nick Eardley, thank you very much. An Israeli businessman in Aberdeen claims he's being hounded by campaigners he says are anti-Semitic. Nissan Ayalon sells Israeli cosmetics, and he's told BBC Scotland that the treatments left him fearful. The Scottish Palestine Solidarity Campaign, who admit to demonstrating at Mr Ayalon's business, deny racism or anti-Semitism. Fiona Stocker reports.
To occupy and take out my land.
Protests outside the Scottish Parliament today marking 100 years since the Balfour Declaration, which paved the way for Israel's creation. In Aberdeen, this Israeli businessman sells products made from Dead Sea minerals. He faces weekly protests. He describes it as Jew chasing.
I don't have the right to exist. I have to justify my existence. I have to ask for permission to live, to walk to work. We were accused of murdering, mass murdering, slaughter, criminals. We were called criminal enterprise. We were called baby killers.
This is what Nissan faced in Belfast. Red paint and dolls thrown at his stall. He faced more protests when he came to Glasgow, and more when he moved on to Aberdeen. Campaigners refute claims that their actions are racist or anti-Semitic.
It's ludicrous. It's ludicrous. And by the way, that charge has been tested twice in Scottish courtrooms, once in an Edinburgh courtroom and recently in a Glasgow courtroom, where two sheriffs repudiated and rejected very quickly any allegation that we were motivated by hatred of Jews or any other people. We hate the sin, not the sinner.
Reflecting on his life in Scotland, Nissan says he still loves the country he's made his home, and he just wants to get on with his life and his business.
Oh, Fiona Stocker's outside Aberdeen City Council tonight. I gather, Fiona, that this concern has been raised several times before.
That's right, Sally. Well, the Scottish Palestine Solidarity Campaign says its actions are all about supporting the Palestinian people and a boycott of Israeli products around the world because of the occupation of its territories. Now, here in Aberdeen, about a year ago, there was a Lib Dem councillor, Martin Gregg, put forward a motion to the chambers behind me after hearing about Nissan Ayalon's case. It said the council rejects any attempts to force individuals, families and legitimate businesses away from Aberdeen on grounds of race, country of origin or religion, and condemns any organisation that tries to do so. Well, that was defeated by a large majority of votes from the SNP, from Labour and the Conservatives. Martin Gregg described that as chilling, and he accused the council of turning a blind eye to anti-Semitism. Now, the council's co-leader, Labour's Jenny Ling, absolutely refutes that. She says that they're against any type of discrimination. Just one final word. The Grampian Racial Equality Council told me a short time ago it was aware of the situation and was trying to find a resolution.
Fiona Stalker, many thanks. Councillors in Glasgow are being asked to reconsider plans for a network of continuous pedestrian and cycle lanes across the city. Disability groups say so-called shared spaces are a hazard to the blind and partially sighted. But the City Council says its scheme puts the needs of pedestrians and cyclists first. Graham Stewart reports.
It used to be the horse and cart that had priority. Then it was the motor car. But now cars, pedestrians and cyclists are vying for the same space. Here in Glasgow's Sauchiehall Street, councillors are hoping to bring some order to the chaos by introducing continuous cycle and pedestrian lanes, which the councils say are more attractive and people-friendly. Except perhaps if you have disabilities and have to navigate crossing the road.
What we have here is a crossing that beeps when it's safe to cross the road, and your blind and partially sighted person knows to cross. If that's taken away with shared space, we just won't know when it's safe to cross the road.
Thank you very much for coming this morning.
In Kirkintilloch, campaigners have been battling for 2 years to have shared spaces scrapped. And last year, Scots toddler Clinton Pringle was killed while on holiday in Jersey after he was struck by a van.
Clinton didn't know where to run because there was no clearly defined pavement. So he didn't know where to go, so he basically didn't have a chance to. And that's the first thing you teach a child. You teach a child this is the road, this is the pavement, this is the green cross code, this is where you're safe. These areas take that away.
Glasgow City Council says its proposal is different. A kerb will separate cyclists from pedestrians and pedestrians from motorists. And they say their model's backed by the Guide Dogs for the Blind Association. Graham Stewart, reporting Scotland, Glasgow.
And let's get the weather forecast now from Judith. It's been a lovely day.
Hasn't it? And hello, Sally, and hello to you at home as well. Yes, it has been a beautiful day. This picture from our weather watchers, these blue skies indicative of what many of us saw. So tonight we hold on to the dry conditions, clearing skies at the moment across eastern and southern Scotland. A wee touch of frost, I think, across the northeast. Temperatures already falling away here. But in the northwest, we're seeing cloud thickening up all the while, and that cloud introducing some outbreaks of patchy rain by tomorrow morning and across the Northern Isles. And a freshening southwesterly wind here as well. By the end of the night, temperatures will have recovered for most of us to around about 5 or 6 Celsius. So tomorrow starts off largely dry, fairly cloudier than we saw today, but some good sunny spells, I think, across eastern Scotland initially. That cloud in the northwest gradually sinking southwards with some bits and pieces of rain on it. Nothing too much getting down towards the central lowlands. So now, as far as the afternoon's concerned, we're actually starting to see something brighter coming through towards the Northern Isles, the northwest, the Western Isles as well, and drier, maybe just 1 or 2 showers. Cloudy with outbreaks of rain through for much of the Highlands. Still bright with some sunshine for the northeast, and generally values of 10 or 11 Celsius. I think the best of any sunshine will tend to be towards the east coast. Elsewhere, it's a cloudy affair, outbreaks of rain. That rain fairly light and patchy, and again, the central lowlands cloud is thickening up, and across the south, maybe a wee bit of brightness holding on until dusk. As far as the rest of the afternoon, as we approach dusk, because it is coming to us early, we do have a weather front lying across the north. That gradually sinks southwards during evening, introducing more cloud, more outbreaks of patchy rain or drizzle. But if you take a look south of the border, there's another weather system bringing plenty of rain here. We're actually escaping the rain Friday night and into Saturday, but we are left with a straightforward westerly wind, which brings showers across western Scotland, some quite heavy ones, blustery towards the west coast. Further east, though, dry with plenty of sunshine, feeling colder though on Saturday, and it leads us to a cold night on Saturday night. And then on Sunday, a straightforward northerly this time, showers in the north, a lot of dry, sunny weather, cold, and it will be dry for Guy Fawkes night as well. That's your forecast.
And that's Reporting Scotland from everyone in the team. A very good evening to you all. I'll be back at 8 and just after 10:30. Bye-bye.